Hey, welcome to Q&A, where you ask your questions and I do my best to give an answer. As always, you can ask your questions on Faith and Life over on slido.com. Use the hashtag ALC22 and I'll do my best to get to it. Hey, got a great question that flows out of the series that we're doing at ALC at the moment. We are working through a series based in the book of Proverbs called A Wisdom That Changes the World. You know, we're looking at Proverbs and the wisdom that is espoused in there, that is not simply for our benefit, but to empower us and to equip us to reflect the character of Christ and bring the rule of God's kingdom to bear by the way we live. And so we're looking at themes within that. And today's question comes out of a message on Sunday where we talked about generosity. And the question is simply this: practically speaking, how can I demonstrate generosity when I'm struggling with rising costs of living and trying to make ends meet? And I hear you. I totally get it. I think that it's not just here in New Zealand, all around we are finding that the inflationary pressures are just creating a lot of hardship for people. Certainly here, I know that our grocery costs are escalating. Costs of living it does seem to be going through the roof. And it means that it's creating a lot of pressure on people's budgets. And so I totally get that, you know, your heart, you want to be generous. You want to show the grace, the grandeur, the generosity of God and His kingdom, but your means are tight. Well, just how can you do it practically? Well, I just want to say that generosity is an attitude, not just an act of giving money. Primarily, all of the things that we do that we would say are generous, they come out of or are a reflection of an underlying attitude that motivates us to do the things we do. And so being generous doesn't have to be about money. It doesn't have to be about giving away things in that regard. I think, for example, of the guy who came to Peter and Philip, I think it was from memory, in Acts chapter 3, verse 6, where Peter says, "Silver and gold I don't have, but what I have, I give you." And then he prayed for healing. But notice what he said: I don't have money, but what I do have, I want to be generous with. What I do have, I will gladly open up my life and share with you. And I think that's a great picture of what it means to be generous when we have no financial resources or limited financial resources. Practically speaking, your question is, how can you demonstrate it? Well, don't look at what you don't have. Look at what you do have. Maybe you've got time and you can invest in other people. We hear again and again and again that people are time poor, that people are feeling lonely, that people don't care about them. Not that there's no one around them, but they don't feel validated, they don't feel heard. You could be generous in your time and getting alongside of people, because that alone is going to build people up and reflect something of Christ. It's showing God's kingdom that people, their value is not in what they do, but in who they are as a reflection of God, that they're created in His image, and spending time with them is going to reinforce that. I think of hospitality. You know, we may not be able to give much, but we could always be hospitable, open up our homes, open up our lives more, invite people in for a meal. You know, when our kids were younger, our budget was a lot tighter than it is now, obviously, and yet Anne was very, very generous. She loved having people in for meals and everything else. And I used to marvel at the way she would just make a little go a long way. But she would do things that weren't expensive, because the focus was not on the meal. The focus was on the fellowship around the table of bringing people into home. And so we would have lots of things like lasagnas and salads and all those things that weren't expensive to cook. Hospitality is not about the meal per se, you know, what you eat. It's about the opportunity to gather people around, break bread together around the table, and build people up, invite them into your life. You could encourage people. You don't need money to encourage people, to praise people, to stop and to recognize. Not long ago, I remember we were walking down the street, my wife and I, and someone just stopped and said, "Oh, I really like your dress." And man, it was just a little comment, but gosh, the influence, the impact it had on my wife was incredible. Now, because it's out of the norm. So why not take time to notice, to praise, to encourage people? That's being generous because it's coming from that attitude. It's silver and gold have I none, but what I have, I give you. So there's lots of ways that you can reflect the character of Christ. You can bring his kingdom to bear by the way you live counterculturally, engaging people, praising people, investing time, listening to people, getting to know people. Those are all acts of generosity that don't require money. So don't be put off by what you don't have. Continue to hold that goal of that desire of wanting to be able to do more, but in the meantime, look at what you can do with what you do have, and look at the non-financial resources, and I guarantee you that God will help you multiply those, and you will do good for others, and you will feel good as a consequence. So I hope that's helpful. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'm sure that we could start a good discussion around different ways we could demonstrate generosity without finances in the comment section below. So why don't we? There's the challenge. Why don't we see how many ways we can come up with showing generosity practically without having to spend money that we don't have? But that's it. Great question. Hope it's helpful. Until next time, God bless.